uniform population loss. That didn't happen. Some areas were devastated by the famine in terms of population. Other areas.
GWR 始める。回帰分析はどうでしょうか。回帰分析は分かりますかね。で、アイルランドの、1841年から51年で人口減少して飢饉に際した時のその要因をいかに説明するかっていう話だったと思うんですけども、歴史地理学といいますか歴史人口学との関係もありますし、それからそうした説明要因を探っていこうという時にまずお話であったのは細かい空間単位でのデータをまず整理しようというやつですね。で、これはだからこれまでそういう研究がなくてデータが発掘されてそれを細かい気圧化したことによって初めてその細かい空間単位のレベルで人口の増減がよく分かったと。でそれに合うその ED と言われている空間レベルでそれを説明する説明要因のやつも集めてそれを分析した結果ということなんですが、それを説明されてそれを通常の回帰分析でその Y が人口の増減ですよねにして説明変数でいろんなものを持ってきて説明しようとしてるんですけども、ちょっと説明すると全部の細かいやつの役がよくわからなかったんですが、畑の面積との人口密度の関係とかいろんなものが確か入ってたと思うんですが、あと、都心までの距離とかね。でそれで通常の回帰分析だとその国全体で計算して一つのパラメータしか出ないんですけども、実はその要因そのものが空間的なバリエーションがあるということでその GWR っていう方法でそれがGI サイエンスといいますか最近のその空間情報科学の中でもその計算をいっぱいしてですね細かいところまで見るっていうそれで、GWR のソフトウェアを開発されて計算しているという、そういう中で実際その説明要因にも空間的なバリエーションが存在していると。だからある地域にとってはその都市の距離みたいなものが影響することもあるし別のところでは、それは逆に作用するという要するに同じ説明変数であっても地域差があるということを明らかにする、そういうものがなぜ起こったのかっていうのがその次のさらなる質問といいますかね研究の対象になってくるというそういうお話で。
The issue of fertilizer really didn't come into this. It wasn't that the land was infertile. It was the potatoes suffered a blight, which was an infection.
Infection.
Which killed off the roots, the potatoes in the ground, and the plants just withered and died. About 20 years, potato blight was quite well known throughout Europe. It occurred periodically, and it didn't just occur in Ireland. It occurred in England and it occurred in other European countries around the same time. It seemed to hit Ireland worse, but the impacts were worse because of the monoculture. Because potatoes were the only things that people were growing. They couldn't turn to an alternative crop, and it wasn't that the land was infertile. It was simply the blight, this infestation on the plant was there. About 20 years after that, they discovered how to cure it, so it was never a problem again. But they just had to spray the plants with an insecticide that got rid of it. So it wasn't fertilizer wasn't an issue. It wasn't that was a problem. And when the blight was over, the lands came back into full production of potatoes. So that wasn't an issue. So that's one question. There was an issue. The third one was climate change. What was this?
Yes, climate change.
Climate change one.
Yes.
There's no evidence of any. This was over a very short period. It was compounded by the fact that the potato blight, this infestation of the potato plants, lasted for 2 or 3 years. So after 1 year, people could just about survive, but in the second year, people kept aside seed potatoes for growing for the next year, so they didn't eat those. But after 1 year of famine, they started to eat those, and then there was a second year of famine, and then by the time the blight was over, there were no seed potatoes to grow, so people starved for the third year. So there were 3 or 4 years of starvation, which was a problem.
And how does it look like in any other country, like England or other European countries?
In other countries, but again, I don't think it was a climate. They do say, the literature says that these were 2 particularly bad wet years, which may have led to a prolonged effect of this infestation. So there may have been a local weather effect, but you wouldn't call it climate change because it was only over a couple of years, and we often have wet summers and dry summers. So it wasn't that there was a big shift in the climate at that particular time. So I'm not sure that was a reason. And also, the impacts of the famine were at a very local scale. Clearly, climate change would have been at a much broader scale. What was the other?
Yeah, and how severe? That's the definition of the severeness of the severeness of the famine.
I
mean, how many people died?
Serious. I just say that there were big changes and big decreases in population, and some places had really small changes in population. So I don't actually define serious effect, and I'm not sure.
Maybe 10% decrease of population might be a severe event. No?
It depends on the context. I think it's hard to define what would be serious. It's a very difficult term to pinpoint. It's very value laden and very subjective. But I don't actually define serious. I don't say I'm just going to look at the serious effects or the serious changes. I look at all the changes, and then there's a range from not very much of a change to a large change, and I try to model why that was happening. So it's not a discrete model. It's not saying I'm just looking at these areas had a serious problem, these didn't. I'm looking at a continuous change in population over the decades of modeling that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Past introduction, we will talk about the digital humanities and the social science, social GIS. And the second part, I will talk about the Japanese Inca on Taiwanese spotlight. I will take two great thinkers of Taiwan, the Hong Yifeng and the Jin Wuxi as examples. The third part is the GIS part. I will show you the Taipei 3 pop music cities regions as a mixed block cultural space. Inca stylish focus. The fourth part is also for the GIS. We go from 2D to 3D to digitalize the Taipei music. We build a Hong Yifeng virtual Taiwanese ballet museum. Then go to the conclusion. So the lecture, the funding is from the government. I have two projects for these lectures. One is the talk about the Taiwanese ballet as modern pop music, the research on Taipei, Shanghai, and even Japan across the border to Media Loop. The second one is for the virtual museum. And this is my research team. They go over sociologies and musicology, Chinese literature, history, social works, and even the information engineering. So, Taiwan is another mixed block. The tone is from Japan, but we sing in Taiwanese. And also we are taking to examine the popularity of Taiwanese ballet music from the mixed block influence from Japan, and especially on the location of Taipei, street